Tonight, let yourself drift to a world of sun-drenched beaches and elegant lobbies, where a family vacation becomes a quiet battleground. This is the story of Renee, a woman who thought a week in paradise would heal old wounds, only to discover her own family saw her not as a matriarch, but as the help. If you're listening all the way through, let me know with a 1 in the comments. Tell me what city you're listening from. Now settle in and let the waves carry you into the story. The invitation had arrived like a sudden shaft of sunlight through a persistently cloudy sky. An email from her son, Jay. "Mom, we're booking a week at the Coastal Paradise in Miami. Valentina and I would love for you to join us. The kids miss their grandma." At 72, Renee Carter had learned to temper her expectations, but this felt different. For 5 years since Jay married Valentina, there had been a gradual, polite distancing. Phone calls that ended too quickly, visits that felt more like obligations, conversations that never deepened. Valentina was beautiful, polished, and as approachable as a museum exhibit behind velvet rope. Renee had tried, but her overtures of friendship were met with a cool, flawless smile that never reached the eyes. This vacation was a chance. A whole week together in a beautiful place. Maybe, away from the pressures of their life in Atlanta, they could finally connect. Maybe she could get to know Zuri, 8, and Deshawn, 10, beyond the stiff holiday greetings and obligatory gift openings. She packed with a hopeful heart, choosing clothes that were elegant but comfortable, wanting to fit in without trying too hard. The 4-hour drive from her home in Sarasota to Miami was the first note in a discordant symphony. Renee sat in the back of Jay's Lincoln Navigator, watching the flat Florida landscape give way to urban sprawl. Up front, Jay and Valentina's conversation was a closed circuit. "I booked us for the seaweed wrap and hot stone massage on Tuesday. And I made reservations at Oceano for Thursday night. It's impossible to get in. I had to call in a favor." "Perfect," Jay murmured, his eyes on the road but his attention clearly on his wife's plans. Renee leaned forward slightly. "That sounds lovely. I've heard the chef at Oceano is wonderful." A beat of silence. Valentina didn't turn around. "Yes, he is." Renee tried again. "Zuri? Deshawn? Are you excited for the beach? I brought a book about seashells we could look at together." From the middle seat, absorbed in their tablets, her grandchildren offered non-committal grunts. Valentina answered for them. "They're fine, Renee. They have their programs." The rest of the drive passed in a bubble of exclusion. Renee watched her son, this handsome, successful 47-year-old man, and felt a pang. He was hers, yet he felt like a stranger. When had his laugh become so perfunctory? When had his eyes, which once sparkled with boyish mischief, taken on this guarded, careful quality around his wife? As the Navigator turned into the sweeping palm-lined drive of the Coastal Paradise Resort, Renee's professional eye automatically assessed the property. Immaculate. The royal palms were perfectly trimmed, the flower beds a riot of meticulously coordinated bougainvillea and hibiscus. The valets in their crisp white polo shirts moved with an efficiency she herself had drilled into the training manuals. This was her kingdom, though no one in the car knew it. After her husband Michael's sudden death from an aneurysm when Jay was just 12, Renee had been left with a mountain of debt and a paralyzing grief. The small, charming bed and breakfast they'd owned in Sarasota became her anchor. She worked 18-hour days, doing everything from scrubbing toilets to negotiating with suppliers. She learned about HVAC systems, property taxes, and hospitality marketing through sheer desperate will. 30 years of that will had built the Coastal Paradise Group, 17 luxury properties across 3 states, a reputation for understated elegance and impeccable service. She was a quiet legend in the industry, known as the architect for her visionary renovations. She kept this life fiercely separate from her identity as Jay's mom. She wanted to be loved for herself, not for her portfolio. "Remember," Valentina said, applying a fresh coat of lipstick in the visor mirror as Jay handed the keys to the valet, "the penthouse, no excuses." Jay nodded. "I got it, Val." The lobby took Renee's breath away, as it always did. It was her masterpiece. Soaring ceilings with slowly rotating fans, floors of creamy travertine marble, the air scented with a subtle, proprietary blend of vanilla, sea salt, and lime. Behind the vast, reclaimed cypress front desk, Jasmine Lockhart looked up. As the resort manager, Jasmine's sharp eyes missed nothing. They widened in surprise for a split second, landing on Renee. A ghost of a smile touched her lips before her professional mask slid back into place. Renee gave the smallest, almost imperceptible shake of her head. Not a word. "Reservation under Carter," Jay announced, his voice taking on a more authoritative tone here in the lobby. "We have the penthouse suite." Jasmine's fingers flew across her keyboard. Her smile was warm but neutral. "Welcome to Coastal Paradise, Mr. Carter. I have your reservation right here. You're confirmed in our stunning Coastal Deluxe Suite, oceanfront, with a magnificent private balcony. The penthouse, unfortunately, is occupied for the duration of your stay." Valentina's pleasant, vacation-ready expression evaporated. She removed her sunglasses slowly. "That's unacceptable. I specifically requested the penthouse when we booked. I spoke to someone named Monica." "I do apologize, Mrs. Carter. The deluxe suite is truly exceptional. I'd be happy to offer a complimentary breakfast credit for the inconvenience." "I don't want a breakfast credit," Valentina snapped, her voice rising. The genteel southern accent she usually affected hardened. "Do you know how much we're spending this week?" Other guests in the plush seating areas began to glance over. Renee felt a flush creep up her neck. She took a small step toward the desk. "Valentina, I'm sure the other suite is lovely," she said softly, aiming to diffuse. "The view from the lower floors is sometimes even better. You can really see the—" Valentina whirled on her. The movement was so sudden, so violent, that Renee took an involuntary step back. "Don't you dare speak!" she shrieked. The sound was shockingly loud, a jagged tear in the lobby's serene soundscape. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger at Renee, then swung back to Jasmine, her voice a venomous stage whisper meant to carry. "Jasmine, or whatever your name is, ignore this old woman. She's not important. She doesn't get a vote." The bustling lobby fell into a stunned, watchful silence. A bellman froze, a suitcase in his hand. A couple checking in stared openly. Renee's cheeks burned, her heart hammered against her ribs so fiercely she feared everyone could hear it. In all her years, through business negotiations, through personal loss, no one had ever spoken to her with such pure, unadulterated contempt. But Valentina wasn't finished. She leaned over the desk, her eyes locked on Jasmine's. "Don't talk to the old woman," she repeated, each word dripping with malice. "She's just the help we brought with us, the nanny, the babysitter. Don't waste your professional time on her." Then came the sound that shattered something inside Renee forever. Laughter from her son. Jay threw his head back and laughed, a rich, genuine sound of amusement, as if his wife's brutal public evisceration of his mother was the wittiest thing he'd ever witnessed. "Oh, Val," he chuckled, wiping an imaginary tear from the corner of his eye. "Mom, just go sit down over there, okay?" He gestured vaguely toward a cluster of armchairs. "Let the adults handle this." The betrayal was an ice-cold lance, piercing through the heat of her humiliation. This was her child, the boy she had sung to sleep, whose fevered brow she had cooled, for whom she had worked until her hands were raw so he could have the best schools, the best opportunities. And he was not just allowing this, he was an enthusiastic co-conspirator. She saw the complex storm in Jasmine's eyes, recognition, fury, a desperate question. Say the word, that look pleaded. Give me the signal, and I will have security escort them out so fast their heads will spin. Renee looked at Jay's laughing face, at Valentina's triumphant sneer. The urge to reveal herself, to watch their smug certainty crumble, was a physical pull. But a deeper, wounded instinct took over. Shame. A profound, crippling shame that her own flesh and blood could see her this way. She couldn't bear to make the scene worse, to turn her private devastation into a public spectacle. "Ma'am," said Jasmine, her voice soft but strained. She was speaking to Renee, not Valentina. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable waiting in our manager's lounge. It's quiet there." "Yes," interjected Valentina with a dramatic sigh, as if granting a great favor. "Take her somewhere she can't embarrass us anymore, and maybe have someone keep an eye on her. She tends to get confused and wander." Another chuckle from Jay. Wordlessly, back straight, shoulders squared with the last of her dignity, Renee picked up her small leather weekender bag, the one she'd had for 20 years, its quality evident to anyone who knew leather, and walked toward the bank of elevators. She didn't look back. But as the polished bronze doors closed, she caught Jasmine's reflection in them. The manager gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. It was a promise. "I see you. I am here." Her suite was, as promised, stunning, oceanfront, a balcony overlooking the turquoise water. The decor was her own design philosophy, light, airy, with natural textures and art from local Florida artists. It should have felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a beautifully appointed prison. She didn't sleep. The scene in the lobby played on a loop behind her eyelids. The sneer, the laughter, the word help. It echoed, morphing in her memory. Was this how they saw her? Not as a mother, a grandmother, a person, but as hired labor, a utility. Morning came, painting the sky in watercolor pastels. A soft knock at the door revealed Jay. He looked well-rested, dressed in designer casual wear. "Mom, we're heading to breakfast. Valentina wants you to watch the kids by the pool afterward so we can hit the spa." No good morning, no how did you sleep, no reference to the nuclear event of the previous evening. It was as if it had never happened or was so insignificant it didn't warrant mention. Renee gripped the doorframe. "Jay, about last night." He waved a hand, his expression of one of mild irritation at being reminded of a minor social faux pas. "Mom, don't start. Valentina was stressed from the drive. You know she has high standards. Just let it go, okay? We're on vacation." "She called me the help, Jay." Renee scratched the words from her throat. "She said I was just the nanny in front of everyone." He shifted his weight, avoiding her eyes. "She didn't mean it like that. It was a joke. You're too sensitive. Can we just have a nice time?" His tone was final. The discussion was closed. The dining room, the Marlin, was bustling. Valentina had commandeered the prime table by the floor-to-ceiling windows. She was already lecturing their server, a young man named Terrell, whom Renee knew to be a hospitality student at Florida International University. "And the orange juice must be fresh squeezed. I can taste the difference. And the eggs, 3 minutes exactly, not runny, not hard." Terrell nodded, his smile tight. Renee felt a surge of empathy for him. She'd hired for kindness as much as skill, and she could see the strain in his eyes. Zuri and Deshawn were already there, hypnotized by the screens of their tablets. They didn't look up as Renee approached. "Good morning, my darlings," she said, her voice too bright. She reached out to gently tuck a stray silky strand behind Zuri's ear. Valentina's hand shot out like a viper, intercepting hers mid-air. "Don't! Her hair was blown out yesterday. I don't want it frizzy." Warm, soft, and clear for storytelling. Renee pulled her hand back as if burned. Zuri didn't even flinch, her eyes locked on a dancing cartoon animal. "Kids," Jay mumbled, not looking up from his phone, "say good morning to Grandma." A synchronized, robotic "morning" was mumbled into the digital void. Renee took the remaining seat, the one with its back to the breathtaking ocean view. Valentina and Jay flanked the children, claiming the vista for themselves. Renee was, once again, physically positioned as an afterthought. "Renee," Valentina said, not looking at her as she meticulously buttered a piece of toast, "after breakfast, pool, sunscreen on the kids every hour. Every hour. Zuri burns like tissue paper. If she gets even a hint of pink, I'm holding you responsible." Renee nodded, the motion stiff. "And only water. No poolside smoothies full of sugar, and keep them out of the deep end. And if they need anything, a Band-Aid, a different towel, anything, you call my cell. Immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself." Each directive was a small paper cut, a meticulous reduction of her competence, her motherhood, her very humanity. She was being given instructions one might give a dim and irresponsible teenager. "How long will you be at the spa?" Renee asked, her voice thin. Valentina finally deigned to look at her, a cold flick of the eyes. "As long as it takes. This is our vacation, Renee. You're here to help." She emphasized the word, a cruel callback to the previous night. Jay said nothing, scrolling through emails. The hours by the pool were an exercise in quiet agony. Renee sat under the shade of a cabana, watching Zuri and Deshawn, who sat at the water's edge, still engrossed in their tablets, the sparkling blue water of the pool holding no allure for them. Around her, other families created a vibrant tapestry of connection, parents playing Marco Polo with shrieking children, grandparents building sandcastles on the fake beach area, laughter ringing in the salt air. Her little trio was a silent, disconnected island. "Grandma?" Zuri's voice. When it came, Renee jumped. "Yes, sweetheart?" The little girl didn't look up from her screen. "Grandma says you used to clean houses for rich people before you got old. Is that true?" The question was a physical blow, landing squarely in Renee's solar plexus. The air left her lungs. Valentina wasn't just being cruel in the moment, she was constructing a narrative, a pitiful biography for Renee to inhabit in her grandchildren's minds. "No, Zuri," Renee said, forcing her voice to stay soft, calm. "Grandma is a businesswoman. I help run hotels." Deshawn, overhearing, snorted without looking up. "Mom says you make up stories about being important 'cause you're embarrassed that you're poor." The cruelty, delivered in a child's flat, matter-of-fact tone, was breathtaking. Renee's mind flashed to her penthouse apartment in Sarasota with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay, to her board meetings, to the charitable foundation she chaired, to the poor-as-a-church mouse lie her son was living and had evidently sold to his family. She was being erased, not just humiliated, but systematically deleted from her own life story and replaced with a pathetic fictional character. When Jay and Valentina returned hours later, they were glowing. Valentina's skin was polished, her hair sleek, a shopping bag from a high-end boutique dangling from her wrist. They looked revitalized, pampered, at her expense, in her spa. "Everything go okay?" Jay asked, his eyes scanning his phone. They were fine. Because what was the alternative? Your wife has taught your children to see me as a lying pauper. "Good," Valentina said, swooping in to kiss the tops of the kids' heads. "You can watch them again tomorrow. We have a tea time at the golf course and then lunch with the Phillips. You remember, the couple we met from Chicago. So sophisticated." Renee just nodded. The pattern was set. She was the unpaid, disrespected nanny funding the vacation of her tormentors. The third day followed the same script. Jay and Valentina had a day trip planned to the wineries in Coral Gables. Renee was to be the childcare. "Lunch at noon sharp. Zuri gets hangry. Have the organic granola bars I left in your room ready." As they were leaving, Renee standing in the hallway, Renee overheard Valentina on her phone. She was using that specific syrupy sweet tone she reserved for manipulating people. No, we can't, not tonight. I'm stuck with the kids. I know it's ridiculous, but it's just a few more days. Once this is all sorted out, we'll be free, I promise. A cold trickle of unease, sharper than before, traced Renee's spine. Once this is all sorted out, it wasn't about the vacation. The phrasing was too permanent, too final. With the children happily building a volcano in the resort's excellent kids club, a program she had designed specifically to encourage creativity, Renee found herself with 2 hours of liberty. She decided to do a casual walkthrough, something she often did incognito at her properties. She wanted to see the staff in action, feel the guest energy. She was passing the row of private, curtained cabanas by the adults-only pool when the wind caught a flutter of fabric and a familiar laugh floated out. It was Valentina's polished, tinkling laugh, but they were supposed to be an hour away. Drawn by a dread she couldn't name, she moved closer, positioning herself behind a massive sculptural clump of fountain grass and palms. "She's getting old," Valentina was saying, the sweetness now laced with a metallic contempt. "I mean, really old, and old people don't live forever, if you catch my drift." A woman's voice, unfamiliar, laughed. "Valentina, you're horrible." "I'm a realist, Brenda. Jay's an only child. It's all coming to us eventually. The only variable is the timeline. How long do we have to pretend to care?" Renee's hand flew to her mouth. She wasn't imagining the subtext. It was text. A man's voice, presumably Brenda's husband. "And the mother, Renee, she's got nothing of her own?" Then her son's voice, clear, casual, utterly convincing in its falsehood. "My mom? God, no. She's broke, lives in a tiny rent-controlled apartment in a dicey part of Sarasota, survives on Social Security and the little checks I send her every month. It's been a drain for years." Renee leaned against the rough trunk of a palm, her legs threatening to give way. The lies were so vast, so audacious. The mortgage payment she made on their Atlanta home, the tuition she paid for the children's private school, the credit card she paid off monthly, the one Valentina used for her little shopping trips. All of it twisted into a narrative where she was the financial vampire. "That's why this whole trip is so annoying," Valentina sighed, the sound of ice clinking in a glass audible. "We have to schlep her around like a sack of laundry because she can't afford to do anything on her own. It's like having a pathetic, aging pet you're too morally bankrupt to put down." Brenda made a sound of vapid sympathy. "How awful for you. And I bet she expects you to take her in when she can't live alone." "Over my dead body," Valentina said, and Renee could picture her sleek smile. "The minute she needs a pill organizer or a walker, it's Shady Acres State Facility. I am not turning my home into a nursing home for some useless old woman who contributed nothing." The viciousness was breathtaking, but it was Jay's next line that truly broke the world. "The sad, funny thing is," he said, his voice tinged with a cruel, almost anthropological amusement, "she still has this fantasy. She tells these wild stories like she's some big business mogul. It's pathetic. She told the kids she owns hotels. Hotels! Can you believe the dementia?" Brenda gasped. "Oh, that's so sad. Early onset, you think?" "Maybe, or just a lifetime of disappointment catching up to her. She's desperate to feel important. You should see her in a store, touching the fine linens like she could ever afford them. It's embarrassing." Their shared laughter, a cocktail of pity, disdain, and superiority, was the sound of Renee's soul being shredded. This wasn't just greed. It was a profound, deep-seated contempt for her very being. They had taken her life's work, her love, her sacrifices, and distilled them into a joke, a symptom of mental decline. They were waiting, eagerly it seemed, for her to die, mocking her until the day arrived. "Well," said Valentina, her voice bright with malice, "at least we won't have to listen to the crazy old bat stories forever. 5 years, 10 tops if she's stubborn, then we can finally live our lives without this Anchor. Renee stumbled back from the palm tree, her vision blurring. The truth was no longer a trickle. It was a tsunami, washing away every illusion, every hope, every shred of denial. They saw her as an anchor, a useless, lying, burdensome anchor, and her son, the center of her universe for 47 years, was not just complicit, he was the architect of the lie. The pain was cataclysmic, but as she stood there in the dappled shade, the sounds of luxury and leisure all around her, something extraordinary happened. The pain didn't consume her. It crystallized. It transformed in the white-hot furnace of betrayal into something new. A cold, clear, unshakable resolve. The meek grandmother hoping for crumbs of affection was gone. In her place stood Renee Carter, founder, CEO, survivor, a woman who had built an empire from a widow's grief, and she was done being the punchline. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of autopilot. She collected the children, she took them to the beach, and for the first time she put her own phone away and truly saw them. They built an elaborate sandcastle city with moats and towers. She taught them how to find the perfect unbroken coquina shells. She told them a story about their grandfather, Michael, a true story about how he once sailed a small boat through a storm to get help for a friend. For a fleeting hour, without the barrier of tablets or their mother's narrative, she saw their genuine, curious smiles. It was the most bittersweet hour of her life. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting her suite in shades of gold and violet, Renee prepared. She changed into a simple but impeccably cut ivory linen dress. She pulled her silver hair back into a sleek chignon. She looked, for the first time since arriving, not like Jay's mom, but like herself. At precisely 7 p.m., a knock came. She opened the door. Jay and Valentina stood there, dressed for dinner. Valentina was in a glittering cocktail dress, Jay in a blazer. "We're heading to the steakhouse," Valentina said, already turning to usher the children out from behind her. "They've had room service. Just put them to bed by 9. "They'll do no such thing," Renee said, her voice not loud, but carrying a resonance that froze them both. Valentina slowly turned back, a flicker of irritation in her eyes. "Excuse me?" "I said," Renee repeated, stepping fully into the doorway, blocking it, "the children are staying with me tonight, and you two need to call the front desk and secure another room. You will be checking out of this hotel and out of my life tomorrow morning." Jay's face contorted in bewildered anger. "Mom, what the hell is this? Have you been drinking?" "I've been listening, Jay. I stood by the cabana today. I heard your charming conversation with your new friends. I heard every lying, vicious, hateful word." Valentina's face went through a fascinating transformation, confusion to dawning horror to rage. "You were spying on us, you creepy old—" For a moment, there was utter silence. Then Valentina erupted in a derisive snort. "You're insane, senile. Jay, she's lost it. She owns a hotel. She probably cleans the toilets here." Her laughter was high, strained, hysterical. Renee didn't flinch. She reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a single folded sheet of paper. She handed it to Jay. It was not a long document. It was a summary prepared by her accountant last month, a list of electronic funds transfers from R. Carter Holdings to Jamond Carter over the past 36 months. The total at the bottom was a number so large it seemed to vibrate on the page: $427,850. Below it was a note: "Private school tuition, Carter children, $118,200. American Express Platinum, authorized user B. Carter. Average monthly balance paid $12,400. Jay's face drained of all color. He stared at the paper, his lips moving soundlessly as he read the numbers again and again. This was the unvarnished truth, the inverse of his lie. He looked up at his wife, his expression crumbling. You said we were helping her. You said this money was from your trust fund. You said she was a burden." "She's lying!" Valentina screamed, her composure obliterated. She grabbed for the paper, but Jay held it out of reach, staring at it as if it were a poisonous snake. "She forged that. She's a pathetic, lonely old woman who makes up stories. She doesn't own anything." As if on cue, a cue Renee had given via a brief, quiet text an hour earlier, there was a firm, professional knock on the open suite door. Everyone turned. Jasmine Lockhart stood there, a picture of calm authority in her tailored navy suit. Two members of the resort's security team, large, calm men in dark polos, flanked her in the hallway. "Miss Carter," Jasmine said, her voice clear and respectful, "we were notified of a disturbance." "Jasmine!" Valentina shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Renee. "Thank God! Tell this delusional woman who actually owns the coastal paradise. Tell her she's nothing. She's just a sad, crazy old lady." Jasmine turned her head slowly. She looked at Valentina, then at Jay, then back at Renee. Her gaze held no hesitation, only a deep, steady certainty. "Mrs. Valentina Carter, Mr. Carter, Renee Carter is the founder, sole owner, and CEO of the Coastal Paradise Resort Group. She signs my paychecks. She designed this lobby. She approved the linen thread count on the bed you slept in last night. She is, in every sense that matters, the reason this paradise exists." The color that left Valentina's face was almost medical in its completeness. She swayed, grabbing the doorframe. Jay simply looked broken, the paper fluttering from his numb fingers to the floor. Renee looked at her son, this stranger she had loved for a lifetime. The grief was there, a vast, empty cavern inside her, but it was quiet now, overshadowed by a towering, righteous certainty. "The financial pipeline is closed, Jay," she said, her voice eerily calm. "As of this moment, the mortgage payments stop, the tuition stops, the credit card is canceled. You will settle your entire bill for this stay, every massage, every glass of Chardonnay, every shrimp cocktail with your own funds before you leave tomorrow at 10 a.m. "Jay, please. Mom, please," whispered Jay, the word a ragged plea. "We can talk about this. It's a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," Renee said, the frost in her voice leaving no room for argument. "You laughed when she called me the help. You lied to your children about who I am. You discussed my death as a financial planning milestone. The son I raised died a long time ago. You're just the man who's been cashing the checks you left behind." She turned to Jasmine and gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Jasmine stepped forward. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, your current suite will be needed. Security will escort you to the front desk to arrange alternative accommodation for the night. Please collect your immediate necessities." The two security men moved forward, not touching, but their presence an immovable boundary. Defeated, exposed, and trembling with the shock of their evaporated future, Jay and Valentina turned. Jay paused, looking back at his mother, his eyes filled with a chaotic storm of regret, fear, and a dawning, horrifying comprehension of what he had truly lost. Renee held his gaze for a moment, then slowly, deliberately closed the door. Renee did not sleep that night. She sat on her balcony, wrapped in a cashmere shawl, and watched the moon trace its path across the black velvet water. She didn't feel victorious. She felt scoured clean, a forest after a wildfire. Everything was ash, but the air was clear and the ground was ready for something new. The next morning, she took Zuri and Deshalon for a final walk on the beach. She didn't offer explanations about their parents. She simply held their hands and said, "No matter what anyone ever tells you, remember this: your grandma loves you, and she is very, very proud of the people she built." She saw confusion in their eyes, but also a seed of curiosity untainted by their mother's poison. It was a start. A week later, back in her Sarasota penthouse, the silence was profound. But it wasn't the lonely silence of before. It was a peaceful, earned quiet. The view of the sailboats on the bay was hers alone to enjoy. Jasmine called her on video, the resort thriving in the background. The Phillips from Chicago called, Miss Carter. They wanted to commend the staff for how we handled that unpleasant family disturbance last week. They said they've never seen management handle something with such class. Renee allowed herself a small, genuine smile. The empire was secure. More than that, it was respected. She had learned the hardest, most liberating lesson of all, that family is not a prison sentence dictated by blood. It is a sacred bond forged in mutual respect. And sometimes the bravest, most loving thing you can do is to stop begging for a seat at a table where you're only ever on the menu, and to build your own feast. Renee's story is a whisper against the roar of the ocean, a reminder that our worth is an internal lighthouse, its beam unwavering even in the fiercest familial storm. Sometimes the journey back to oneself begins in a moment of searing, unbearable truth and the quiet courage to finally, mercifully believe it. If this story of reclamation and quiet strength held you tonight, leave a 1 below. Your likes help these tales become lighthouses for others navigating their own rough waters. For more stories to guide you into rest, you'll find 2 listener favorites on your screen. Subscribe for your nightly journey into peace. Thank you for listening. Wherever you are, may you always trust the quiet voice that knows your true value, and may your night be as deep and restorative as the sea. Good night.